Hello and welcome to a video introduction to Level 2 Drivers of Change Assignment 3 Choices, part of the CFM Digital Badging Project. And in this video I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the way in which choices can affect our path into the future and how they reinforce or push back against various trends and events shaping the timeline. Now in this talk I was using the occasion of the 50th anniversary of the North Carolina Museums Conference, which was founded in December 1963, to look over 50 years of North Carolina history and use it as a launching point to look at the next 50 years. But these examples, even though they are exclusively North Carolinian, will have general applicability. So, the first event I looked at after the founding, the first choice I looked at after the founding of NCMC, took place in May 1969 when this gentleman, Howard N. Lee, made history when he was elected the first black mayor of Chapel Hill. So the trend that is being punctuated by this choice is the trend towards desegregation in the South. And Howard Lee, by choosing to run for mayor in a city and a state and a region that had never had a black mayor before, and the choice of the electorate, which was predominantly white, to elect him, was a real landmark that reinforced the trend towards integration in the South. This is particularly notable because only 10% of the town's residents were black, and only half of those were registered to vote. So this was really a joint effort to elect the first black mayor of Chapel Hill and the first black mayor in that region. And it had ripple effects through time. North Carolina Governor Jim Hunt went on to appoint Lee Secretary of the Department of Natural Resources and Community Development, which made him also the first black member of a governor's cabinet in the South, and he then went on to serve 13 years in the North Carolina Senate. All right, next trend. We're going to look at an event and a choice that took place in 1996. The trend that this is building on is global warming and the increased number of recorded storms affecting North Carolina. You can see that even in recent history we've had an increasing number of storms, a dramatic increase throughout the 20th century. And an event punctuating that trend was Hurricane Fran in 1996. Hurricane Fran had a 12-foot storm surge in North Carolina. It left 1.3 million people without power. It did $2.4 billion in damage, and it left at least 6 people dead. So, choices. What is North Carolina and the institutions and people who live along the coast going to do about these increased storm surges? There's a lot of debate, for example, about whether the federal government should keep bailing people out and helping them to rebuild. People are struggling with whether they want to stay in their damaged homes and take insurance money and fix them or move inland. And whole municipalities are trying to figure out what to do when the projections are that some of them may be essentially underwater during even mild storm surges in the future. Well, one choice is the choice of the Duke Marine Laboratory to hold their ground on Pivers Island, where they're located. But they aren't ignoring this trend. They broke ground last year on the Orrin-Pilkey Marine Sciences and Conservation Genetics Center, which will open in fall of 2013, and it is designed to flood. On the first floor, you can take everything out, move it away, let the building flood, and then move back in. So it is accommodating this trend towards more frequent severe storms by building a resilient building that is not so much trying to withstand the storm as accommodate it. Very interesting choice. Okay, another trend that has been affecting the U.S. for the past century, and certainly has had a large effect on North Carolina, is the trend towards consolidation of American companies. And as this happens, a lot of specific locations, cities and towns, have lost local businesses that supported the local nonprofit sector. So they got bought up or consolidated, they still exist, but the headquarters may be somewhere else in the US or may even be overseas, at which point that company, even if it still has a toehold in the town, may feel less inclined to support the local nonprofit community. But in this case, a specific event in 1998 actually benefited Charlotte, North Carolina, because Bank of America consolidated and bought up some other banking institutions and moved its headquarters to Charlotte under the direction of CEO and philanthropist Hugh McCall. And he made a series of choices, first of all, to move the headquarters to Charlotte, and secondly, to direct a lot of the bank's philanthropy towards the city and towards the arts community in general and the art museum in particular. So, choice of a major company led by their CEO that led to the economic and cultural transformation of a city. Another trend shaping the financial landscape, the economic landscape of North Carolina, has been the long-term decline of the textile and the apparel industries. And for the past few decades, they really have lost out to cheaper competition overseas. For many decades, the economic strategy of North Carolina was kind of depressingly to provide a relatively uneducated and low-cost workforce, which made them within the U.S. a very economically competitive place to move companies that needed unskilled labor. But of course, as soon as that could be sent overseas where the labor was even cheaper, they lost out in turn. So a choice punctuating this trend, the CEO of Cannon Textiles decided to close this plant, the Pillowtex plant, in July 2003. This was a devastating event for the region of the towns of Eden and Concord. It was the largest permanent layoff in the history of the state, and it resulted in the loss of over 7,600 jobs in one fell swoop. So there's an economic decision that made a lot of sense for the company, further reinforced the trend of the decline of the textile and apparel industry in North Carolina, and that will have a second act, so hold on, because we're going to return to that decision in a moment. Okay, another trend that is national but certainly had great effects on North Carolina is the decline in smoking in the U.S. over the last few decades of the 20th century and a rise in anti-tobacco sentiment, popularly and in legislation. And in 2004, the federal government established the Tobacco Transition Program, which was a buyout that basically paid tobacco farmers not to raise tobacco. So it was trying to encourage them to transition to other crops. And it's a choice that the legislator made that helped drive a reduction in acreage in North Carolina devoted to tobacco and the rise in alternate crops, including specialty food crops such as strawberries, which has tied in turn with the trend towards healthy local organic food that is sourced from local farmers, locavorism. So there was a legislative choice that is having profound effects in changing the economic and physical and cultural landscape of North Carolina. I told you that we would come back to Pillowtex and the closing of that plant. So here's part 2 of that story. That gentleman in the upper left-hand corner of your screen is David Murdoch, who is the former owner of the Cannon Textile Mill and had decided to close the Pillowtex plant. Well, in 2008, he turned around and used that site where he closed the plant and chose to give the land and invest a lot of his money in creating the North Carolina Research Campus, which is north of Charlotte. Now, this is building on a long-term trend in North Carolina to move away from the failing industries of textiles and apparel and invest in biotechnology and research. You may have heard of Research Triangle Park, which started in the last half of the 20th century and is one of the most economically viable and vibrant areas of development and businesses in North Carolina, and now they're going to have this new research and industrial complex that is going to focus on the study of plant-based foods and how compounds produced in plants can protect against disease and support human health. This is a major effort by the state of North Carolina to revitalize the region following the decline of the textile industry. It's supported mainly through annual funding from the state of North Carolina and federal research grants to university researchers located on the campus. But it was really this man's vision, David Murdoch, that helped bring that all together and make it happen. So one man's choice having a big effect. And now we're here in 2013, in a future partially shaped by the choices that these various people and groups made over time to get us here. And what we will be exploring in a future assignment is how choices can help you look forward to figure out how you can get to other particular points that have not yet happened in the cone of plausibility and aim for your preferred future.